This is the Mercedes EQA, a new fully electric SUV with quite a big opportunity on its hands because you've got more expensive, bigger electric SUVs than this, like the Audi e-tron and the Jaguar I-Pace. But where the EQA fits is below those SUVs. And there you've got a market that's got more mainstream offerings like the Kia e-Niro, Peugeot E2008, Ford Mustang Mach-E and the VW ID.4 that's coming up as well. So does the EQA come straight in as the go-to premium family electric SUV? We're driving it today to find out exactly how good it is, and we're going to tell you how it compares to all of those rivals too. But before we start and get stuck in with this review, make sure you go to whatcar.com if you want to get a great saving off your next car, and do subscribe to our channel to see all of our other video reviews. Now, Mercedes has bold ambitions of launching 6 electric cars in just a couple of years' time, and this is part of those plans. But while some of those other future models are going to sit on their own dedicated EV platforms, the EQA, like the EQC and the EQV, is based on a fuel-powered car, the GLA. But you can see that there's quite a big difference in how those two cars look. And the main change is down here at the front, where you can see a very different front end from the GLA. So with the EQA, you've got this kind of black plastic filler over the front here with a big badge and a couple of distinctive lines either side. Plus, you've got the kind of monobrow big light bar that runs along the front of the car as well. More changes compared to the GLA are with the alloys. So there's 2 trim levels with the EQA, Sport and AMG line. No matter which one you go for, you get 18-inch alloys as standard, like the ones that we've got here. But if you do go for AMG line, then you can have the choice of changing them to 19 or 20-inch alloys. At the back of the car, more changes with new lights here and a full width light bar along the whole of the back of the car, which is all very reminiscent of the EQC, very similar styling to that, but quite different and distinctive from the GLA. So, is it different inside? Well, it's not really different at all, not hugely noticeably anyway. There are a couple of differences, like slightly different branding and displays on these screens, and also some models have some lights built into the dashboard here. You can also, on some trim levels, get seats that are partly made from recycled plastic bottles. But apart from that, it's the same look, the same layout, the same finish as you get in the GLA. And that is no problem at all, because in the electric car world, this is one of the best interiors out there. Obviously, it's got a very appealing look and layout, and it's backed up by pretty good build quality. So nice squidgy materials up here. And the only place where it doesn't feel quite so high quality is around these vents, which, as you can see, have a little bit of wobble, and below that, on the climate control, a bit of unwanted movement there too. But still, if you think the benchmark really for electric car interiors is something like the Audi e-tron, which is really, really well made inside, this isn't that far off what you experience in that car, and it's £20,000 cheaper. Plus, many people would argue that it's got a much more appealing layout rather than the relatively sensible Audi e-tron interior. So lots to like there, certainly. And the other good thing, not only is it well built and feels nice and it's good to look at, but the tech that comes with it is also among the best around in the electric car world. If you go for a GLA, the entry-level trims get 2 7-inch screens, one for the driver display, one for the infotainment. On the higher trim levels, you get this setup, which you can see in this car, which is 2 10-inch displays. But on the EQA, every model gets those bigger screens as standard. And they're really clear, really good. The only slight problem might be, depending on where you have the steering wheel, you might be blocking some of the driver display. So you'll have to check that it works for where you want to sit. Now, the system itself, it's the same MBUX infotainment system that we've used on lots of other Mercedes. And so it still has a simple layout that's relatively easy to get your head around, a responsive touchscreen, but crucially, what makes this system so good is the fact that you've got a trackpad as well. So you can control this screen while you're driving without just using the touchscreen. So it's far less distracting being able to do that and use this trackpad down here. On top of that, you've also got these slightly fiddly, but quite useful really, touch sensitive pads on the steering wheel as well to control the infotainment system and also to adjust what you're seeing on the digital driver display. And again, this, compared to anything in the electric car class, is very, very impressive. So there's lots to like up front in the EQA. In the back, the big change from the GLA is actually under the floor because that's where the battery's gone in the EQA. So in order to accommodate it, they've raised the floor. And it means that this rear bench actually feels quite low in relation to the high floor. So you have this kind of odd sitting position where your knees are pretty high, certainly higher than they are in a GLA. But still, there's no compromise on space. So you've still got actually a really good amount of legroom by electric SUV standards. Feels quite airy back here as well. Even with this sunroof, it does cut into headroom, but not that much. I'm just under 6 foot and I can still sit up fairly easily in here. It does feel quite spacious, really. It's fairly impressive. Now, the GLA isn't the biggest family SUV out there, but with this car, I'm thinking comparing it to the e-Niro, the E2008, it's pretty good. Obviously, an e-tron and an I-Pace, they've got a much bigger footprint, so they are more spacious, but still, the EQA is pretty good. You can also pull this down for an armrest or for your 2 surprise cup holders in there. And one good thing that remains from the GLA is the fact that these 3 rear seats can fold down individually. And you can even bring this middle one down to give you some easy access to the boot or to just stick your skis through. So rear seat space is slightly altered going from the GLA to the EQA, and it's the same story for the boot, although it's a bit more of an impact back here. You do lose a fair chunk of storage space in the EQA compared to the GLA. But you can see that the space you're left with is still a practical, simple shape inside. There's no load lip at the entry as well, so it should be easy to load stuff into the back of here. And there is even a little bit of underfloor storage that's just about big enough to keep the charging cables. But this is one of the smaller boots in the electric family SUV class. But now, let's take the EQA for a drive. So here we are again with another new electric car, and the first number that I want to throw at you isn't the range, isn't the power, it's the weight. Now, the Mercedes EQA, based on the GLA, doesn't have a formidable footprint on the road necessarily. It's a family SUV, the same size as a Volvo XC40 or an Audi Q3, but this EQA weighs 2,040 kilograms, which is pretty bonkers, especially when you consider that the lightest petrol-powered GLA is about 500-600 kilograms lighter than this electric version. So that really is a pretty heavy car, but does that matter? Can you feel it on the road? Well, dynamically, yes, unsurprisingly, you can. Cornering at speed results in quite a lot of body lean, and the light steering is very numb around the centre, so it's not an electric car that delivers much in the way of handling joy. And there are quite a lot of other electric rivals that handle with more composure. There are also quite a lot of other electric cars that are more comfortable overall than the EQA. Something that a lot of other Mercedes products suffer with is the impact of road imperfections on the ride of this car. So speed bumps, potholes, the EQA really can't cope with them that well. And the problem that it has is that when it hits them, you get quite a lot of noise through the suspension as well, particularly from the rear axle. Now, obviously, nothing rides silently over a pothole. That doesn't happen. But Mercedes cars do seem to be afflicted by quite a lot of noise in a way that other manufacturers aren't. And this is especially exposed in the EQA, partly because there's no engine noise to cover it. But it isn't just the suspension noise that's an issue, it's the overall ride quality. It has quite a firm, unsettled feel to it at all speeds, even with the electrically adjustable dampers our test car was fitted with, and the smallest alloy wheels available in the lineup. But this is by no means a horrifically uncomfortable car. It's just that other electric SUVs are just overall a bit more controlled, settled, and comfortable. Now, this isn't just a weight issue, but the EQA isn't a particularly quick car, especially by electric car standards. So it has a 66.5 kilowatt hour battery with one electric motor that drives the front wheels, and that has 188 brake horsepower. Now that's the setup for this EQA 250 model that we're in now. And the 0 to 62 miles per hour time is 8.9 seconds, which is pretty unremarkable really. It's not very slow, but it's certainly not quick by electric car standards. But you're more likely to be planning family holidays than entering drag races with the EQA. So what's the range like? The 66.5 kilowatt hour battery delivers a WLTP certified official range from 249 miles to 263 miles, which is decent, but fairly unremarkable. So it's far enough to be able to fit into lots of people's lifestyles without having to have a lot of forethought before parting with your cash to get this electric car. But the reason it's slightly underwhelming is because we're seeing quite a lot of new EVs now that are over 300 miles in the ranges that they offer. So having this product with closer to 250 miles means that it isn't particularly outstanding. And when you've run out of juice, what about charging? The EQA has an 11 kilowatt onboard charger, which means if you're charging from an 11 kilowatt home wall box, then you can get a 10 to 100% charge in around 5 hours and 45 minutes. But if you're not charging at home and you need to charge out and about, then the maximum fast charging speed of the EQA is 100 kilowatts, which, like the range, is fine, but not particularly amazing, because now we're seeing some other EVs that are able to charge at faster speeds than that. So the Audi e-tron, that can charge at 150 kilowatts, and the Tesla Model 3, that can charge at 250 kilowatts. If you do want to eke out the range, you have, of course, got a few different drive modes to help you do that, like Eco, and you also have a few different levels of regenerative braking to help you as well. Now, you can control that using the paddles on the steering wheel here, which in the fuel-powered GLA, of course, would help you change gear if you had an automatic gearbox. But now, a couple of taps on the left paddle puts the car in the most severe level of regenerative braking. And with that on, you really do have to touch the brake pedal very little. You've got a mid setting, and you've also just got a normal D mode with the regen on its lowest setting there. Now, the mode you have it in has quite a big impact on the brake pedal itself. So in normal D mode, the brake pedal is okay. It's a little bit numb and kind of difficult to judge the inputs you need to stop smoothly. But in the strongest regen mode, D-, if you use the brake pedal and apply a little bit more than a gentle touch to it, then you're basically performing an emergency stop. So that's definitely a mode that you want to be using in quite slow moving stop-start town traffic. It's not the mode you want to have it in if you're on the motorway or if you're on a fast country road where you might have to use quite a lot of force on the brake pedals suddenly. And it's worth pointing out that this isn't something that other EVs with similar one-pedal driving modes suffer from. But still, even though there are a few areas where the EQA is a little bit patchy on the road, it's got a properly fantastic interior. But what else do you need to know about the EQA? The EQA is fairly expensive, so the £40,000 starting price does look like quite a lot compared to our favourite version of the Kia e-Niro. And then also this car is going to cost more than an equivalent version of the Ford Mustang Mach-E, the VW ID.4 and the Skoda Enyaq. But if we're talking premium electric SUVs, then it's a bargain compared to the £60,000 Audi e-tron. The EQA was supposed to launch in 2020, but it was put back by 6 months. I wonder why. This model doesn't have one, but you can add a tow bar to your EQA, and if you do, then it can tow up to 750 kilograms, which isn't enough for your next caravanning holiday, but should be enough for a small trailer or mounting a bike rack. Initially, there are 2 trim levels to choose from in the EQA lineup. There's Sport and AMG line. Now, Sport gets absolutely loads of equipment, so although it isn't a big jump to AMG line, the only change there is the exterior styling in a few different places. So we'd instead stick with Sport and maybe consider adding one of the optional packs. The sat-nav has a function that calculates a route that will get the driver to their destination fastest, taking into account charging times. On top of that, if you're headed to a charging station on your sat-nav, then the car will heat or cool the battery so it's at the perfect temperature for rapid charging when you arrive. You'll still probably end up just using Waze though. The voice command system in here is also one of the better ones around. You can wake it up by saying, "Hey Mercedes,
how can I help?
Play BBC Radio 5 Live."
I'm sorry. Can you say that again, please?
Play BBC Radio 5 Live. And there you go. All EQAs get ambient interior lighting with a choice of 64 different colours to choose from. So the Mercedes EQA could have been a cut-price, scaled-down version of the electric luxury on offer in cars like the Audi e-tron and Jaguar I-Pace. But it doesn't quite hit the mark in that respect. It has its strengths, mainly a first-rate interior by electric car standards with a great look and great tech, and many people may be sold on that alone. But a poor ride and ordinary range means it doesn't necessarily look like a bargain compared to those more expensive but more capable rivals. A closer direct competitor is the Volvo XC40 Recharge, which itself is quite a pricey EV. But compared to the Volvo, the EQA is slower, less practical, and not as good to drive. And then when you get to the more mainstream offerings like the e-Niro and VW ID3, they may not be as plush inside as the Mercedes, but they are altogether more rounded electric offerings that cost less. And of course, if you want an EV and aren't fussed about having an SUV body, then the Tesla Model 3, the best electric car you can buy right now, is available for the same money. For detailed written reviews of every new and used car, go to whatcar.com. And on our website, we can also help you find your next car for a great price through our trusted dealer network. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like and do subscribe to our channel to see lots more video reviews.